Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. I'm so thankful you're joining us today, whatever platform you might be on, whether it's audio or video. And this is our last in a series talking about the art of us. Very blessed today to have a couple special guests with me. And we're going to talk about divorce, marriage, kids, and sometimes how the most painful things in our life can actually lead to some of the most beautiful things in our life, because we all go through that. So let me introduce you to Pastor Matt and Amy. Thank you guys so much for being here today.
Hello, everyone.
It is great to have you. Of course, Pastor Matt's our executive pastor here at Potential Church, and he, Amy, and the family came down, 7 years ago?
10 years.
Time goes by very quickly. Very quickly. Of course, you're younger. You just been here.
Yeah.
Is that the way I'm not sure that's the way that works, but anyways, again, thanks so much for sharing with us. Let's start, maybe tell us a little bit about where you grew up, how you grew up. Do you have brothers, sisters, that kind of thing? So tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Since Amy's the real talk, I'll let you go first.
Oh, wow. Threw me under there. Okay, so I grew up a pastor's kid. So that's always how you first identify yourself, I guess, if you're a pastor's kid, because that's who you are and what you do. So, pastor's kid. Have an older sister, grew up the youngest, and then the unthinkable happened and my parents separated. So I had to reevaluate what it was like not to be a pastor's kid for a minute and figure out who I was. And then my parents both eventually remarried, and my dad had 2 more kids. So I've got a younger brother and sister by him. But it was good times.
So how old were you when the relationship ended?
I was in 4th grade when they separated. At first it was like not real, and then all these counselors at school are telling you it's not your fault, and I'm like, well, I didn't think it was, but now that you mentioned it, maybe I did, but it was okay. I had to move. We had to find a new church to attend, not to actually for my dad to work at. He had to resign, had to go to a new school, had to move out of the house. We were staying in a parsonage, so it's like everything changed in the middle of figuring out how to live, between parents' homes. So it was rough, but in that I think God prepared me for what I was going to have in the future. So.
Yeah, God's good that way. And I think sometimes people even forget about folks in ministry and how they're tied together that way. When there are struggles within the family, and it impacts not only the family, but it also impacts the profession. It impacts the finances. It impacts, like you said, every aspect of your life. And I think maybe that's why the scripture talks about the role of family and in ministers and those kind of things. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. Pastor Matt, tell us a little bit about how you grew up. And
Well, we both grew up in a small town, Clinton, North Carolina, Sampson County, and grew up in a home with, of course, both of my parents. I have 2 older sisters that are still living in Clinton. My parents have since passed away, but likewise, when I was 14 or 15 years old, my parents ended up splitting. And from that, my dad remarried, and I have a younger sister, a little bit younger than my oldest child, Paige. And then, of course, my mother remarried, and of course, since she's passed away, he's gone on with his life. But growing up, we grew up in church. My grandfather was a preacher. My dad was a deacon. My mother was the Sunday school director for the kids area. She's actually, I don't know if you ever heard of Girls in Action.
Oh yeah.
So she was over the GAs, but yeah,
I was an RA.
Yes, Royal Ambassador.
That's right.
But anyway, so we grew up in a small community. We grew up a part of the church family, and that's been part of our makeup and how we've lived out our lives.
Yeah, well, and before we jump into how all the relationship has come about, I know you're got a little Native American genealogy or whatever. Tell us a little bit about that. That's interesting.
Not only growing up in a small community, but growing up in a Native American community. My dad's full-blooded Native American, Coharie Indian. It's a tribe of about 2,500 folks in our home county, Sampson and Harnett counties. And so not only are you a part of a community, you're part of a kind of a bigger family, an extended family. So that really just meant that anyone could take me at any time and spank me. But no, it was, our plans were around the different churches. So New Bethel Baptist Church is where we were reared, and that was our people.
It's interesting how we all have different experiences, and sometimes we just don't take the time as people to talk and to learn from one another, really, from those experiences. So, how long have you guys been married?
I know, 20 years.
20. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary on December 20th. Oh, December 14th. Wow. I'm sorry. I was thinking 20. I'm sorry. That number is stuck.
Right. You were just saying, you were making sure she knew.
That's right.
Thanks for that. So 2 decades, that makes it sound a little longer, you know what I'm saying? Now, how did you guys meet?
Well, I was leading worship at our church, and we were having something that we called a revival. Pretty much it's a kind of conference that they have every night of the week, and typically a guest pastor would come in and teach the congregation those nights. And Amy's pastor was teaching that week. You want to say anything about how we met?
My cousin attended his church, and she was like, "Do you want to go out with Matt? He can sing." And I was like, "Well, I'll go out with him once. I'll do one day. He does have a good voice, and he loves Jesus. So, yeah, I'll go out with him."
So, and how old were you guys at the time?
I was 24.
I was 19.
And so I found out that she was interested. I did not see her that night. That was on a Tuesday night. And I found out that there's this interested girl that wants to go out with me. So the first thing I did, I invited her to come back to church on Friday night. So that was the first time I met her, and we ended up sitting together. And
Yeah, you want to tell him you had booked 2 dates in one night?
I was not going to say that. I did bite another. Yeah. I don't know what to say. But anyway, after sitting together that night there and at church, the last night of revival, I asked her would she go out with me on the next night, Saturday night. And
So on Friday, let me come back. So on Friday night, was Amy, were you on one side of him and this other woman on the other side of him? Or
She didn't sit with us at all.
I didn't remember that I had invited her until after we were sitting in the seat together, me and Amy. And I looked behind about a couple rows, and she was sitting behind me. But anyway, we digress.
See, for those of you watching who attend Potential Church, you're going to find out some things about your pastors that you didn't know. All right. So anyway, so you guys met. You started to date. How long before you, what some might say, fell in love, or you realized, this is more than just a date?
Honest to goodness, Pastor Troy, before I went on that Saturday date with her, I told my friend who was helping me clean my car and everything, I said, I'm going to marry her. I just kind of knew it from the beginning. And by that time, remember, I had been in a relationship, so I knew what I was looking for, what I believed God wanted for me. And so I just felt that she was the person and that she was a godsend.
And I had the intentions of one date.
Yeah, we're on 2 totally different sides of the spectrum on that one.
But, yeah, God worked it out for us.
And then how long did you date before you got married?
18 months?
Yeah.
18 months.
We dated about a year, got engaged, and then, yeah.
Engaged after a year, and then 8 months until we got married.
That's Steph and I were about a year, actually.
Wow.
And we were young. She was 20 and I was 22, so I can't. At the time, I'm like, I don't understand why her parents don't like me. now I look back and I think, well, I wouldn't have liked me either. You know what I mean? So I'll just kind of. But anyways, I also wanted to talk to you guys not only because, 2 decades of healthy relationship, and we'll talk about your kids, and all of that is inspiring and a lot that we can learn from it. But I also, as you mentioned, Pastor Matt, you had a prior relationship. You went through a divorce, and I think it's important your parents, you said, were experienced that. Amy experienced that. I know many of us have. And so I think it's important to talk about how do we walk through those things in such a way to be where you guys are today, not only in your relationship, but your relationship with the kids and just that whole process. So if we can go back to that first relationship and it ending, what are some of the emotions that maybe some that are out there listening can identify when something you thought was going to last doesn't last?
I think that's the first thing to realize, that your dream did not come true, and especially if you've had parents that split up or divorced, it's happening to me as well. What did I do? What occurred? And you are left at a place of just wondering, and like, not me too, And but when I was walking through that time in my life, and just thinking back at it, first of all, I have to say God has been faithful. That even at times when I didn't understand what I was going through or even how to navigate, God remained faithful. And I knew there were certain things that I needed to remain faithful in that time as well. But I married Angie when she was, I guess it's okay to say the name.
Yeah.
So just make sure we don't send this to her. But anyway, I married my former wife. Let's see, I was 20 years old and she was 18. And so we were young. We had actually already had our oldest child prior to getting married. So Paige was, I think she was 5 or 7 months, after she was born, we got married. And during that time, you set off to kind of have life and live life. And then the unfortunate happened. I discovered that after our youngest child, Ian, was 6 months old or so, that she had been unfaithful. Now, she had struggled some with some mental illness. Now we know it's called postpartum depression.
Correct.
But then we didn't really know what that was. It may be even, I don't even know if it had a name at that time. But, I saw some signs after Ian was born of something just was not right. But, one thing, I guess, eventually led to another. She was unfaithful. And it felt like, my world was falling apart, And what I wanted to ensure is that, because we were both, Christ followers, is what I thought. We're going to church. And then I saw a pattern just of a couple weeks, less than a month, of signs that something was not right with her spiritually. And then all of a sudden, we hit this brick wall in our relationship. But, through that, I can say, again, God was faithful. And what I wanted to ensure was that whatever occurred in the next step, even if it included forgiveness and it included all these other different things, I wanted to make sure we biblically transition to the next step.
Right.
I do know the Bible talks about certain ways that you can be released from a marriage, but I took upon, and it was hard. It's humbling, to know that your spouse has been unfaithful, because what is other people going to think? What is, what do you even feel about yourself?
Right.
But again, I really had a strong urge to, what does the Bible say about this situation, about this time of my life, and what can I do just to move forward, even in the midst of this pain, to still honor God.
So at this time, Paige and Ian have both been born, right? So
Paige was 2 and Ian was 6 or 7 months old, both in diapers.
And did they stay with you at that time?
They did. Again, she was suffering, I believe, from postpartum depression, and the first arrangement was that I would keep them a week and then she would keep them a week. And where we're from in North Carolina, really the mother would have to really do something awful for the courts to award the custody to the father. And I just remember praying, Pastor Troy, that God, please don't take my babies from me. I just, your relationships, kind of now expired. You didn't want that separation between you and your kids. So I remember praying that, but we tried that for a couple weeks. And I had him the first week, and then she had him the second week. And then after that, her life began to get too busy to keep her commitment to that week. So whenever she says, well, can you just keep him? I said, absolutely. Or if she couldn't keep him for a weekend, I said, I'll take him, no problem. And just over a period of time, she worked herself out of their lives, and I was officially then a single parent.
Wow. So as far as Paige and Ian, then they don't have a lot of memories of that time.
No, sir.
Is there anything you well, let me ask you kind of in two ways. One, what did you do to make sure that, it's one thing to say you want to do something God's way, but you still have to deal with the skin and the circumstances and everybody's comments and opinions. So what are some things that you did to make sure you were healthy so that you could make sure that the kids were healthy?
Without a blink in the eye, I made sure I poured myself into church. I thought I loved the church before then, but I really fell in love with the local church during that time. Again, we're a small Native American community, and actually the church I was attending was her family's church. And at that point, whenever she did what she did, I saw even her family rally around me and my two kids. Mm-hmm. And that's why I believe there's such a power in the local church, because even though I was at my lowest, they were very instrumental to building me back together again. God used them in a big, big way. And just thinking back over the years where I was really in that survival mode, because I had now 2 babies in diapers that I was just trying to keep alive. And I didn't necessarily work on myself in a sense. I was just trying to keep them fed, keep them clothed, get them to daycare so I can travel and get to work. And, it was in that survival mode for so long. But I can say that even through stepping through my own emotion, that I was in a safe place at my church that helped me in every single way.
Mm. So you through the support, love, encouragement of the local church, you begin to experience the healing, and at the same time learn, because the kids were young when all this is going on. So you're learning to be a father no matter what's going on. And then of course, you hear, or Amy, I guess, hears that, anyways, this thing could possibly happen. Now, how old were the kids when you guys met for that first time?
2 and 4.
2 and 4. Now, that's what were your thoughts? I mean, did you know that when you said I'll do 1?
Yes, that's why I said I'll do 1.
It was a benevolent date.
He looked so sad, right? Like one of those puppies.
Yeah, going through a hard time. No, I did know, and I was hesitant. I was never the person who wanted to, like, oh, can I hold your kid? Oh, can I babysit for you? I just didn't know what to do with kids. It naturally was not, it just wasn't built in me for some reason. I just, so I don't know why I agreed knowing that about myself. I guess it was God lining things up, but it was weird that.
I just felt sorry for me. It is what it was.
Now, had you even asking her out with a couple of kids and all that, was any of that in your mind then, or?
Well, what I had done, probably a year and a half prior to meeting Amy, I remember praying, Pastor Troy. I remember opening my Bible to Proverbs 31. And I knelt down beside my bed and I said, God, I messed it up the first time, because, really to have a happy marriage is all about who you marry. Mm-hmm. I've heard you teach that even before. But I remember praying to God, say, God, I want this woman here. I want this woman. I don't know how to find her. So God, help me out here. And sure enough, not too long after that, she walks into my church. And so really at that point, I had to exercise some level of faith that God was going to restore my family. Mm. And so, when I look at Amy and think of all that she has done for God sent her to restore, to deliver us and put us back together. So, I'll always see her in that light. But, it was a God thing. Matt didn't have really anything to do with it. I would have messed it up.
Right. Yeah, don't we all? That's such a great thought. So, Amy, what are some things that once you're like, this is the guy I love and this is where it's going to go, but there's Paige and there's Ian and, you want them to be, did you intentionally do some things to build that relationship with them?
I didn't know what to do, honestly. I would love to say, I started reading all these books and, there was this big thing, and that's why we're successful. But it was just taking every day at a time and just trying my best. modeling really what my parents had showed me. Despite the fact they were separated, they always showed me love, and they always demonstrated that. And I think I leaned on that, just doing what I know they done for me, even though it didn't come naturally. And I think I probably guilted myself for the longest of times, and it was probably till recently where I, felt like, gosh, they missed out on so much because it wasn't a natural thing for me. But then I realized then that made it more special when you choose to love somebody, even though it wasn't a natural feeling, and so it was just day by day doing the things that I knew they needed, just serving them, taking care of whatever they needed, doing homework with them, going to all the cheerleading stuff, all the soccer stuff. I'm doing what I thought moms do. And then in the middle of that, trying to make sure I expressed love to,
Right.
saying, I love you, And even when you're not my mom,
Right.
would come out, but just gradually trying to be there and stay there and let them know I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. I'm going to do the stuff I know to do until we get this all figured out.
Do you remember when they first started to call you mom?
Before we got married. So no pressure, right? It was, wow, these kids are calling me mom. We're not even married yet. But I remember they called me mom. Paige got upset with me one day on the way to Walmart, and she called me Amy. And I said, okay, now you can call me mom, you can call me Amy, but we're not going to do both. I was like, so you go ahead and think, you go ahead and decide which way we're going to go with this, and I'm fine with either. And so she cooled off, and I was mom again. But, it was kind of a lot of pressure when you haven't even married him yet, but I knew that God had called me into this relationship. I felt confident in that, and I think that's what gave me the courage to step into something that I was really uncomfortable doing, kind of like ministry.
Right.
When you've had the worst of days, you're calling for sure, and that keeps you there.
Pastor Matt, as you see this being worked out, is there anything you intentionally did, or even as you reflect, you wish maybe you would have done as far as Amy connecting with Paige and Ian?
Well, I think the greatest thing that I could have done and still do today is to take my family to church. I don't have it all figured out. I don't have the answers. I'm still trying to figure things out.
That's right.
But what I do know is that God loved his church, and he sent his son to give his life for the church, and that if I don't know the answers, I can always take my family. If I take my family to church, teach them to love their church, teach them to love their pastors, teach them to love the Word of God, teach them to pray, teach them to be a part of the life of the church. And in that, if we're sown or woven into the fabric of the church, we're going to be okay. I didn't have to have all the answers, and I think I released myself of that. But even with the transition that Amy had to make, in becoming my wife, becoming their mom, I didn't know how to teach her how to take on someone else's kids because I wasn't having to do that.
Right.
But I knew that we could go to church and we could figure this out together, and to give her those opportunities to be the mom, to be the good mom, to be the bad mom, to be the,
He afforded me a lot of grace. He really did. I would tell anybody like that, make sure you afford somebody grace in what they're walking through. Like I had to look where Paige and Ian were coming from and think, okay, I've been in a similar situation. I've had the step parent come in and afford them, okay, let me let them feel what they're feeling and try to get there. And he did that to me. I do remember there was one time when he's like, oh, I forget you're not their mom. And I'm like, I don't, and I think it clicked with him then, okay, I'm going to have to be a little intentional with this because she's going through this, and so just, I think, being mindful of where somebody's coming from. When, like you were saying earlier, somebody's always got a different perspective and different things they're going through. Even though we're in the same room, we're experiencing it differently. So
it's funny, just as both of you share, I know it's helping so many people, but at the same time, it's not rocket science. It's something anybody can do if they're willing to do it, to walk with God, to leverage the local church, and to be patient with one another and give love. Now, we're about out of time, and I know there's a lot more people would like to hear, but of course we fast forward and we have the birth of Jackson and Aiden. Now, how many years pass? How old was Ian and Paige when Jackson was born?
10 years between Ian and Jackson.
The Paige was 12 and Ian's.
So that you gave some time then to settle in. Did things change with the Jackson and I mean I know they change. You go from 2 kids to 4 kids, but as far as the relationships, or had you settled that so much as far as them seeing you as mom and this is our family that or have you had to work through any issues between the 2 older ones and the 2 younger ones?
Well, yes. I think it naturally presented issues because when I had Jackson, the guilt came again. I think I cried when I found out I was pregnant with Jackson because poor Ian. And then when I found out I was pregnant, the poor Aiden. So it's this guilt I think moms probably do when they're pregnant. But then after I had Jackson, I think the natural mother feelings started to come. And then I started guilting myself again. And, and then I had to come to terms with that and then realize I did the best I could and that I love them and they love me and that it's all going to work out. And then you do also have and I did this to my dad too with my younger siblings. Well, if I would have done that, you really would have tore into me, and so we hear that some, just because I'm older now, so I'm going to parent differently, and I've grown as a person. I'm much more mature than when I was 19. Hope not. Yeah. And so you just grow, but you do have to answer to them because they feel like you're doing it different.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And we do. I mean, we all are maturing and growing, and.
I told Paige and Ian they were great guinea pigs. Jackson and Aiden have much better parents because of them.
I don't know.
In some ways, you're wiser. Yes. Not as much energy as you had in the early days. You know what I mean? So it
trade-off.
It evens out in the end. That's for sure. But I know, I get to see that, kind of all those years of hard work that y'all put in. And so, it's exciting to hear the backstory, because we all tend to look at the way things are in the present and assume they've always been that way. And either way, sometimes we might look at somebody's life in the present and assume they've always made bad decisions, when in reality, maybe at one point in their life they was incredibly successful. But, to see where you guys are today and know that, along the way there's been some real intentional steps. It wasn't so much what you knew, but what you did that has allowed you to get to the place where you have a family of 6, which in today's world is a large family, but a family that loves one another, loves God, loves His church, Paige is out married with a grandchild, and Ian just went to go into the military. And, Jackson and Aiden are growing up to be incredible young men. So thank you. Thank you for persevering. Thank you for loving one another. Thank you, Amy, for taking on a lot of responsibility at the age of 19 and rescuing Pastor Matt. Where would he be? You know what I mean? And modeling not only for our church, but everybody who's listening today, what it means to be a husband and wife and parents. Incredible job. And it's possible. And I just want to remind everybody who's watching or listening today that you can do the same thing. You just have to make those same decisions. You don't have to be the wisest person who's ever lived. You don't have to have all the perfect circumstances. You just have to make intentional, right decisions, I would say. And again, follow God, love Him, love His people, be a part of a local church, and you'd be surprised. The local church is not perfect, but there are people there that'll help you on this journey. So again, thanks so much for being a part of this series, The Art of Us, learning to love again, no matter what our circumstances are. Love is a beautiful thing, and God wants all of us to experience it. be sure and share it with somebody who needs to hear what you just heard. And we'll see you next week right here. We're starting a new series, Everyday Leadership, on the Troy Gramling Podcast. God bless.